This week's NATO summit meeting is expected to involve several significant decisions, with Ukraine's application to join the alliance being the most crucial. Some NATO capitals exhibit a strong enthusiasm for Ukraine, considering a path to membership even in the midst of an ongoing war and unresolved territorial disputes. The likely move on the table is the approval of a membership action plan for Kyiv, which is typically the final substantive measure an applicant country must fulfill before being admitted to the alliance. Pro-NATO and pro-Ukraine lobbyists in the West are actively advocating for this step. However, the consideration of such a move reflects poorly on the judgment and prudence of NATO leaders. The Kremlin has repeatedly emphasized that NATO membership for Ukraine would cross a red line concerning Russia's vital security interests. Unfortunately, policymakers from the Bush, Obama, Trump, and Biden administrations have been largely unresponsive to Moscow's persistent warnings. When President George Bush initially proposed NATO membership for Ukraine in 2008, the support from most Eastern European members of the alliance faced opposition from some of NATO's older members, particularly France and Germany. German Chancellor Angela Merkel, in particular, expressed reluctance due to Ukraine's endemic corruption and the risk of antagonizing Russia. As a result, a compromise was reached that delayed Ukraine's aspirations to join NATO. Although the 2008 Bucharest summit did not extend an explicit membership invitation, it committed to the possibility of Ukraine's future inclusion. Moscow interpreted even this move as a provocative act. Subsequent actions by the United States and NATO further fueled suspicion and hostility. Western interference in Ukraine, such as supporting the overthrow of the country's elected pro-Russia president, Viktor Yanukovych in 2014, led to a significant response from the Kremlin, resulting in the annexation of Crimea, home to Russia's Black Sea Fleet. The situation deteriorated steadily from that point. In fact, the United States, the United Kingdom, and some other NATO countries have effectively treated Ukraine as a de facto member of the alliance. Arms shipments were sent to Kyiv, the United States provided military training, and established ties with Ukrainian intelligence, and joint military exercises between NATO and Ukraine were conducted. Russia's 2021 demand for the withdrawal of alliance troops and military equipment from its borders, as well as the insistence on Ukraine's neutral status, clearly conveyed that President Vladimir Putin and his colleagues were not solely concerned about a NATO membership card for Kyiv. The West's increasingly overt attempt to turn Ukraine into an informal NATO military asset was deemed equally unacceptable. The failure of Washington and its alliance partners to heed Moscow's escalating warnings has been the main factor contributing to the ongoing tragedy of the Russia-Ukraine war. Instead of de-escalating the situation, the Biden administration and other NATO hardliners seem determined to exacerbate it. Not only have several countries provided Ukraine with more powerful weaponry, as if it were already an alliance member, entitled to aid under Article 5, but the issue of formal membership is once again being considered. Extending an invitation for Ukraine to join NATO, whether now or in the future, would be an ultimate insult and provocation to Russia. France and Germany should have adhered to their positions in 2008 and made it unequivocal that Ukraine would never become a member of the alliance. Such a stance might have prevented a considerable amount of needless tragedy. Instead, they accepted the eventual goal of NATO membership for Kyiv. The key question now is whether more prudent NATO countries, like France, Turkey, and Hungary, will remain steadfast and prevent a greater folly. Germany, under the leadership of Chancellor Olaf Scholz and his pro-war Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock, cannot be relied upon to act sensibly. However, since alliance decisions require consensus, opposition from these three countries should be sufficient to counter Washington's latest reckless initiative. Nevertheless, all these governments face tremendous pressure from the United States and other members to align with the current course. Rather than succumbing to such pressure, they should push back against the pro-Ukraine dogmatism of Washington, London, Warsaw, and other centers. The only hope for a peaceful Eastern Europe going forward is a fully neutral Ukraine, with a status akin to that of Austria. Anything else will continue to provoke Moscow, and raise fears that NATO will exploit Kyiv in proxy wars against Russia. The current summit offers an opportunity, perhaps the final one, for more prudent members of the alliance to save Europe from the consequences of the policies advocated by Ukraine's pro-war supporters.